Hello to all the participants. I am Floriane Morin. Claire Brison, Olivier Schintz and me are very happy to welcome you back for this second panel dedicated to creating and exhibiting reparation in action, ? Many of you are following the webinars this afternoon. Thank you so much. And a special welcome to all those who join us now. We have placed our conference under the banner of human rights and museums responsibility. Our keynote, Christine Carpenter, has defended these fundamental principles in her interview last Thursday. The video is available on Global Provenance websites. The link is shared by the chat with you. Our three guests will now open up new creative perspectives to build a future of culturally sustainable initiatives and confront us with what matters most in museum practices dealing with items or archives from every colonial context. I mean respect, dialogue, caring, and caution. It's our pleasure to introduce this panel dedicated chairwoman, Senam Awo Okutseto. Senam is a British-American artist and writer of Ghanaian and US descent. Her research and practice investigates previously overlooked social, political histories in the context of art, architecture, modernity, memory, and material culture, with a particular focus on West Africa and its diasporas. She is a doctoral candidate in cultural studies at Birkbeck College, University of London. She has taught at institutions in Europe, West Africa, and the USA. She is the founder of Art in Social Structures and now semi-dormant Ghanaian NGO that promotes heritage and educational initiatives in Ghana. She is one of the artists who were given carte blanche at the exotic exhibition at the Palais de Rumines in Lausanne, and she presented her film Disappearing Africans, a response to extract from Diderot and d'Alembert encyclopedia, such as Traite des Nègres, Conquête, État de Nature, Suisse, or Honor. The film's theme is the effacement of the peoples of a continent by slavery, and consequently of their stories and experiences in history. Senam, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. And also thank you to the organizers of the conference for inviting me to moderate this panel. I'm afraid to everybody in the audience that my internet connection is a little bit wobbly. So I'm going to try to make short shrift of this introduction. The framework of this panel, of this conference, has been very good at addressing the complicated history of museums, of collections, often a history that began or is inextricably tied to acts of colonial violence, of conquest. And today's panelists have produced interesting critical responses as art historians, as artists, as performers, to this problematic history. And what's really great is that the existing panels that have already taken place, like the conversation between Karine Nayeli-Durand and the human rights lawyer Christine Carpenter, helped to frame some of the presentations in our discussion today. Like Christine Carpenter in her discussion on the 21st of January revealed that in America in the 1800s, there was a practice of collecting indigenous human body parts. And by the 1990s, the Smithsonian Museum had, and I quote, 18 to 19,000 human body parts in its collection. And activism legislations then needed to take place to repatriate those human body parts to indigenous communities. So this surprised me because I've always known there is a strange history of body parts in museums, but I'd never realized the grand scale of it. And there's also another panel that just prior to this one, which was Beatrice Voiro, who spoke of the Lucas Stehlen and Theo Meyer objects in the Museum del Culturen in Basel, which also in part contains objects that were robbed from graves in French Polynesia. There's a very complex history to the way in which we look at objects and artifacts, and all of our panelists show us different ways in which the body is always central to the discourse of colonialism and is often the site of colonial violence. But many of our panelists also show us how the body can be a site for the recovery from these acts of violence and for the restitution of human dignity as well as human rights. I feel like some historical context. Our panelists are all extremely accomplished, but they have concentrated their work into 5-minute videos that are very intense. So actually, each of them could give a 2-hour presentation. And I'm hoping that through the discussion, we can expand towards the larger research they've done, because they've really done an incredible amount of work. I am going to try and give a little background to help flesh out some of the things that will help you understand more. For instance, we have works that respond to the 1897 British sacking of Benin. It's a very important historic moment where the British claim to be retaliating for the murder of their envoys. Their envoys were actually going to try and ambush the Benin Kingdom, which was a very lucrative trade route, very important for trade, not just in West Africa, but for the Portuguese, for Europeans. The Portuguese had first come into contact with the Kingdom of Benin in the late 1400s, in about 1490. And they traded slaves, ivory, artifacts, and the Benin Kingdom was said to be so rich, it was a city kingdom, that the road to enter the kingdom, a forest kingdom, enter the kingdom in the forest was said to be 1 kilometer wide, just to give a sense of its power and might. And the British in 1897 launched a second attack to try and subdue the kingdom and take over its trade routes, burning the kingdom's capital to the ground, and in doing so, looting and pillaging its most precious artifacts, its ivories and its bronze castings. These castings then found their way, and these artifacts found their way into collections all over the world, the Met, especially the British Museum, in museums in Germany. And the history of these stolen artifacts resonates within the consciousness of African art. And some of the artifacts, like the mask of the Queen Mother of Benin, the Mask of Idia, has become a major symbol of colonial theft and the refusal of institutions to do restitution. Because when in 1977, the Nigerian government tried to borrow this mask for the Festac International Arts Festival, the British Museum said, well, no, because it's climate controlled. And if we sent the mask back, it would disintegrate from the shock of the climate change. And you're not equipped to receive back this form of heritage that was stolen from you. So this image became very strongly symbolic of the violence of the theft, and then the sort of patronizing and paternalizing discourse of modernity that refused the repatriation of these artifacts. And the work of Yuri Canero and Samson Odiemen deals very directly with this legacy in a social, psychological, and actually even a spiritual way. Therefore, it's very important to bear in mind this history when looking at the performance. Also, we have, where are we? We have our third panelist, Maria Inigo Clavo, who also deals with the subject of colonial violence, trauma, and recovery. For her presentation on the artistic and cultural responses to the Terrar and the patrimony, her work again underscores the importance of the body and how the discourse of the body remains central to understanding and recovering and resisting the traumas induced by acts of colonial violence and conquest. Similarly, the work of Ana Bilbao shows us how artistic responses to the colonial structures museums can create a new social awareness and a new psychological awareness of how these structures are subliminally perpetuated in ways that we didn't really understand. And this is a very wry and incisive analysis, but she also offers us alternatives to museum structures. And her presentation, I think, will allow you to look with new perspectives on the site of the body again as a site of colonial trauma, even in today's museum experiences. So now I'm going to just read a little bit of the biographies of our panelists before we get to the videos. Who do we have first? Anna Bilbao is a lecturer in modern and contemporary art at the University of York in the United Kingdom. Her research explores histories of exhibition making and art institutions, as well as contemporary art from the global South. Prior to joining York, she was editor of After All Journal, research fellow at the After All Research Centre at Central St Martin's University of the Arts, London, and teaching fellow at the University of Essex. In 2017, she was scholar in the art history department at KU Leuven, Belgium. Maria Ingo Clavo is a researcher, curator, and lecturer at the Open University of Catalonia with a PhD from the Universidad Complutense, Madrid. She has been associate lecturer at Central St Martin's School of Arts at Exhibition Studies program and lecturer at the University of Essex Masters in Curating Latin American Art. Her research focuses on coloniality, curating and museology, modernity and its inventions of otherness, untranslatability and art in Latin America, with special attention to Brazilian art. She has written extensively on the display of non-Western knowledges and coloniality. She edited an issue of the bilingual magazine Revisiones entitled, Is It Possible to Colonize? And is now co-editing with Claudia Hopkins a special issue of Art and Translation magazine that will be published by Routledge. Beatriz Navarro and Yuri Canero co-direct Oniricon, a physical and metaphysical theatre performing arts project with reference to the physical theatre style. They have come together with Samson Odiemen to produce Eyagbon's Mirror, a collaboration between Samson Odiemen and Oniricon. After leaving the Amsterdam Jazz Conservatory, Yuri Canero, the Swiss artist, continued to develop his percussion and voice study on the road from West Africa to Italy, passing by India and landing in Mexico, where he worked and studied ritual dance for 3 years and also somatic movement. In Marseille, he studied at the FAR and obtained the diploma in dramaturgy in public space. He's also part of the European Network In Situ, and since 2015, he has been co-director of the site-specific dance theatre company Oniricon. In 2018, he co-created and performed Gaia Gaudi with Gardi Hutter, Michelle Vogel, and Beatriz Navarro. And he has also been selected for the Swiss National Festival Schweizer Theatertreffen. Beatriz Navarro completed her training as a contemporary dancer at the National School of Classical and Contemporary Dance at the National Institute of Fine Arts, Mexico City. And for 20 years, Beatriz Navarro has been dancing with various national and international dance companies in Mexico, Spain, Costa Rica, and France. Samuel Odiemen's biography has just on walkies. Samuel, you have to forgive me, I'm going to read your bio before the questions properly. But Samuel is a contemporary artist based in Graz, who's very accomplished. And he is also from a line of the Guild of Traditional Craftsmen from Benin. And he's also a descendant of the royal families who were robbed during the Benin conquest. And therefore his testimony is very unique and special today, because he really brings multiple dimensions and historical perspectives to his presentation. And Samuel, you have to forgive me, I'm going to dig out your bio for the next part of this. And so now, without further ado, I look forward to seeing the video presentations of our panelists. Thank you.